day, and thank you for tuning in 3D, the Daily Divine Direction broadcast. For all of our new listeners and viewers who are tuning in for the very first time, I'm Pastor Pope, Senior Pastor of New Life Christian Center, located in Wilmington, Delaware at 400 Hillcrest Avenue. We are located on the corner of Hillcrest and Marsh Road. We invite you to come every Sunday and worship with us at 10 a.m. if you're ever in our area. If you're not in our area, you can tune in for the Sunday sermon when we go live at 10:45 a.m. But if you know anyone who's in our area, tell them we invite them to come and worship with us at New Life Christian Center, 400 Hillcrest Avenue, Wilmington, Delaware, 19809. And I want to, first of all, take a moment to say to all of our listeners and viewers, we are here with you in 3D, the Daily Divine Direction broadcast from 12:30 p.m. until 1 p.m. Eastern Daylight Time, broadcasting live from the FijiWater.com sponsored studio, where you can discuss careers, finances, entrepreneurship. You can discuss marriage, divorce, raising children, blending families. You can discuss dating and relationships. Whatever's in your heart, whatever's on your mind, God is concerned about that which concerns you. And that is the reason that we are here with you in 3D, the Daily Divine Direction broadcast, which is brought to you daily by Fiji Water, Earth's finest water. You may already know that Fiji water comes from Fiji. However, did you know that it is created by nature? It is untouched by man. It starts as a tropical rainfall which slowly filters through layers of volcanic rock, where the water collects in a natural, sustainable artesian aquifer where it is bottled right at the source, free from human contact until you unscrew the blue cap. Fiji Water, Earth's finest water, will be delivered right to your front door when you subscribe for delivery, and you'll save money at FijiWater.com. This is not just ordinary water. This is Earth's finest water at FijiWater.com. And I want to give a shout out. I'm going to start doing this more frequently, but I want to welcome all of our listeners and viewers, new listeners and viewers who have tuned in from places like Cincinnati, Detroit, Denver in the U.S. And I see we have new listeners and viewers who are tuning in with us in Germany and in France. So we thank all of you for tuning in wherever you are across the U.S. and wherever you are around the globe. We welcome you right here in 3D, the Daily Divine Direction broadcast. And we want you to stay connected with us throughout the week through our internet radio station, WKAPfaith.com, where we play music 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, 365 days a year. And I see so many new listeners and viewers tuning in. So stay connected with us. We'll be right here for you on one of our platforms. And for those of you who continue supporting the broadcast by giving on the contribution pages of our websites at newlifeministryinternational.com and newlifeinternationalcdc.com, and those of you that use the QR code or the link provided on Facebook and YouTube, we thank all of you for your continued support and for your commitment. Now, I know that you can see that there is, and those of you that are using Zelle on the T-Mobile caller text line at 267-992-1424, we thank all of you for your support and for your commitment. Now, our website looks different because we're in the process of updating our website. So stay connected with us, stay tuned in with us. Make certain that you continue to support, and we thank all of you for your continued support and for your commitment to be tuned in with us right here in 3D, the Daily Divine Direction broadcast. So I'm going to address a communication that came in from one of our listeners and viewers who indicated that you and your significant other are both only children and are finding it difficult to navigate your relationship. You want to know, how can you both get what you want? So first of all, let me say this to you. It's not a matter of how do you both get what you want. What you want is not always important. When you're in a relationship, you are both bringing your life experiences, you are both bringing all of your personality with you into the relationship. However, because you've made the decision to come together as a couple, what you want is not always the most important thing. What's important is how you move the relationship forward. What's important is how do you maximize the success of your relationship. What's important is how do you get to the place where you can decide that marriage is what the two of you desire. Because at the end goal for any relationship between a man and a woman should be to marry and to hopefully, prayerfully, if it's the will of God, create the next generation. That is what the goal of any relationship should be. It should not be just for the sake of dating and for being in a relationship. That's first and foremost. So you have to think about it in these terms. You're finding it difficult to navigate because you're both only children. You've been able to have it your way for all of your youthful life. You've been able to have it your way because you had no siblings to share time with, to share luxuries with, to share privilege with. You've never had to do that because you're an only child. But there's a difference between being a child and being an adult. So when you become an adult, you have to make a conscious decision that if I'm going to enter into a relationship, the other person now becomes my focus. Self-care is important. You have to take care of yourself so that you can care for the other person. But what they desire to experience in the relationship has to be of importance to you. And then you have to make certain that you're not in a relationship with someone who is not going to care about what's important to you. So let me say this to all of our listeners and viewers, because we're focused on this theme today because there's a lot going on in our society about relationships right now. And one of the things that I encourage people to realize is that when you decide to join yourself to someone else, they become your importance. There's a reason that while you're in the relationship until you get to a place of marriage, it's titled significant other. They become significant to you. If you're the person in your life, whether it's your significant other or your spouse, if they're not the most important thing to you, then you need to be by yourself. And I'm just using that as an analogy. I know that's a bit of shock to hear, but the reality is that the other person, your significant other or your spouse, must become, if you're going to maximize the success in your relationship, they must become the most important thing to you. Of most importance. And what I mean by that, in your personal life, obviously your professional life, that's a different scenario. So let's focus on the person, the personal. In the personal, they must become of significant importance. They must become the most important. Your human nature is to take care of yourself, but you have to want to take care of them because you desire to be in the relationship. So you have to say to yourself, okay, I've had it my way while I was a child, but now I'm an adult and I've gotten into this relationship with someone else. And this works for married people too. But now what you want, it can't be the most important thing. It's not always the most important thing what you want. You both, and I'll give everyone an analogy. There's always been society has told us and taught us and told us so many things that are incorrect. And that when you break it down and drill down, they make no sense. But there was an analogy floating around for some time: happy wife, happy life. And I've repeatedly said, no, it's happy spouse, happy house. And the reason is because both of you then become the focus of one another, and you begin to build a great life together. You're not going to, and that's one of the reasons that we have a 50% divorce rate in America, because society tells us all these things that make no sense, but we buy into them because they sound, the Bible talks about itchy ears. It's the cliche sounds good. It's quick. It's gives us a feeling of, if I do that, then it's going to make me happy. Well, first of all, you can't make anyone happy. They have to desire to be happy. And so when each of you make the decision to be happy, then you're going to have a happy house. You happy spouse, happy house. You both get to be happy, and that allows you to build a great quality of life. So let's examine what the difficulties are, and then you two are in this tug of war because you want it your way, he wants it his way. Because you both, and you dwell on the fact that you both are only children, so that's the way it should be. Then you're not a good fit for one another. Because the Bible says you have to be equally yoked. You have to be willing to walk together in agreement, and if one of you gets weak on the walk, the other one will keep pulling you forward. There's another analogy for that in the Bible, and that is that when you have a threefold cord, it cannot be broken. The Bible tells us walk together in agreement. So if you're not walking together in agreements, how do you expect to have a successful relationship? So truth be told, you two just may not be good for one another. Now, that's a decision you have to make. You have to decide, are you willing to be good for one another? Because you can be good for yourselves and not be good for each other. But that's a decision you have to make. And you have to sit down and really decide, because every one of us should want the best life we can create, the best quality of life that we can build. And it can't just be based on, I want my way. So what I'm going to encourage everyone to do, and think about this, I'm going to encourage everyone to, let's get back to the basics. We've seen over the decades, we've seen marriage erode, and when we've seen marriage erode, we've seen the quality of life erode. Even people who didn't have it all had it all. It's very interesting. I was really reflecting on the fact as I was prayerful about this communication, and I have both my two sets of grandparents were married their entire lives until death did they part. And they each had 9 children. But they were married, they stayed together, they had a good quality of life. And then the next generation, not so much. Divorce began to happen, and the quality of life was disrupted for many people. And then our generation came along, and we've continued. So I said all of that to say, one era, divorce households were solid. They stayed together. The next generation, they stayed together. The generation after that, we saw divorce begin to creep in at one rate, and then it's now declined to 50% per household. Now, divorce happens because what God joins together, no man separates. And we joined ourselves to people that God didn't assign for our lives, that was not who God had for us. And the reason is because we got away from God. You know, I think about the generations before me. My grandparents went to church every Sunday. That's what they taught their children to do. And so, and my I did know one set of my great-grandparents. So they were together till death did they part. So that was 2 generations. Now the next 2 generations, we see people getting away from God, people getting away from a relationship with the Lord, and then divorce happens. And now we're all trying to build a great quality of life, so some of that has been restored, and we are really seeking to maximize the quality of life. So you have to say to yourself, okay, I'm only going to choose to be with the person that God has for me. And if you're both on your own individual mission, then you're not what God has joined together. And you have to recognize that. And you have to either decide you're going to come together as one and walk in agreement, or you're going to have to go your separate ways. I'm just going to say that for you. Because what you want is not the most important thing. This segment of the broadcast is brought to you by T-Mobile, America's largest and most reliable 5G provider at no extra charge. So if you're not currently a T-Mobile customer, you may call or text on the T-Mobile call or text line at 267-992-1424. We will move you into our queue so that you may become a T-Mobile customer and experience America's largest and most reliable 5G provider at no extra charge. Taxes and fees are included in your bill, and if you auto pay by attaching a credit card to your account, you will receive a discount on your monthly bill. At T-Mobile, America's largest and most reliable 5G provider at no extra charge. I'm going to address another communication that came in from one of our listeners and viewers who indicated you want to know if it is feasible to enjoy a long-distance relationship and be successful long-term. So, the answer to your question is, it is possible. However, you must develop a goal for the relationship and a plan to move it forward. So, it's interesting because it's definitely feasible to have a long distance relationship, but depending on where you are geographically, you have to your goal and your plan have to include that. So your goal has to be, okay, we want to have a long-term relationship. We want to have a relationship that is going to eventually lead to marriage. Okay, and what time period does that look like? Okay, so you've got to take careers into consideration, and you have to decide, okay, our goal is going to be that we're going to come together in this one geographical location, whichever that one might be. And then you have to develop a plan to accomplish that. So let me tell you what a long-term relationship, long-term relationship looks like. You may decide, okay, we're going to travel to visit one another once a month. And your whole focus has to be on your professional careers during the course of that month so that you have the time to get away and spend some time together once a month. And what that looks like is during the week, you're going to have to make certain that you communicate. Phone makes it easier now. Zoom makes it easier now. You know, video calls make it easier now. So you can communicate more effectively and efficiently now. And so your focus can't be on extracurricular activities when you're in a long distance relationship, if it's going to be long term and successful. So that means you put a full day in, business day in, at work. Unless you have something work related in the evening, your evening is spent communicating and working so that you get everything done that needs to be done professionally, so that you can take that time, whether it's at the end of the month or whether it's in the middle of the month, whenever it might be, so that you can travel to one another and spend time together. Okay. And you have to be intentional about that. And then what you want to do is make sure that maybe once a quarter, you extend the time that you're going to be able to be together. That you, once a quarter, you really get in a few days together, not just a weekend, not just an extended weekend. And you can navigate that with the holidays. Because interestingly enough, we were just having a conversation about the fact that we go here, particularly here in America, we go from one holiday to the next. We just got over Christmas and New Year's. Now, February, we've got, Valentine's Day here, which, don't get me started on these man-made holidays for retail, but Valentine's Day, we've got Martin Luther King Day, we've got an inauguration coming up, so some things are going to be closed on certain days. So that's February. You can navigate a holiday to extend the time that you're going to spend together. But do that once a quarter. And then you have to decide what period of time are you going to do this, because one of you, and I'm always going to say, the man has to decide if he can relocate, because it's probably going to be easier for the man to relocate his career than it will be for the woman, particularly if there's children involved, if you're going to blend a family. There's going to be a lot of dynamics. But you've got to decide where you want to live, where the two of you want to live. And that's got to be part of your plan. So your goal has to be to come together, and your plan has to be, how do we navigate relocation and getting married? What period of time is that going to take? How are we going to accomplish that? Are we going to buy a home in one region or the other? All these things have to be navigated, but they all involve goals and plans. But you can successfully have a long distance relationship, because if you're intentional, you can plan this out and be successful at it. If you're not intentional and you're both all over the place, sooner or later it'll come to an end. And I'm not the guy who wants to see anyone's relationships come to an end. I encourage relationships. It is important for men and women to come together and in holy matrimony. It's important that if God provides the opportunity for you to create the next generation, then that's what we're here for. That's our assignment, part of our assignment. So it's absolutely feasible and possible, but you've got to want to do it. You've got to want to do it the right way, and that requires developing goals and plan to move your relationship forward. Don't be afraid of a long distance relationship. It can work. You just have to be intentional about it. This segment of the broadcast is brought to you by Charles Tyrwhitt, located in London, the UK. They also have stores in New York, Chicago, Washington, D.C., and at the King of Prussia Mall in King of Prussia, Pennsylvania. So if you're in any of those areas, stop in at their retail stores. They have everything a man could possibly need. And The White Company, located in London, the UK. They also have a store on Fifth Avenue in New York. So if you're in New York, stop in at the retail store. They have everything you could possibly need: home goods, clothing for men, women, and children. And if you're not in New York, you can order from The White Company at thewhitecompany.com. And if you are not in any of the areas to locate a Charles Tyrwhitt store, you can order from Charles Tyrwhitt at ctshirts.com. Both companies will ship and deliver right to your front door in an appropriate period of time. I'm going to address another communication that came in from one of our listeners and viewers. Okay, so your question was, and I had to chuckle when I read this. You wanted to know if myself and my wife would ever sit down on the air to discuss how to have a successful marriage. I do not believe that is going to happen, that would ever happen. I know you should never say never. My wife has no interest in being on the air. My wife doesn't thrive on being in the public. That's not who she is. So I don't believe that will ever happen, that would ever happen. However, I'll never say never, because it might be, we're doing a marriage retreat or something like that in the future. I don't know. But I can tell you this. My wife does not prefer to be on the air. But I thought it was interesting that you asked that question, because I know sometimes it's good to hear from people who are navigating marriage. I will say that, we're not perfect. We had a discussion about that recently, because we're very intentional about marriage and about life. This is our life. We're not interested in making changes. Marriage is intentional for us. We are husband and wife who have been chosen by God to serve Him in a very specific way. And that is our life. Ministry is our life. So we're not perfect, but we're committed. And we're intentional. And I think that's, she might say something different if she were on the air about a successful marriage, but I think that's to have a successful marriage, that's one of the things that is required, is that you're committed, that you want to be married, and that you're intentional about your marriage. And so, do I ever think that's going to happen, that she's going to want to sit down on the air and discuss it? No, but it was nice that you asked. I'm going to address another communication that came in from one of our listeners and viewers. However, before I do that, I want to remind everyone, stay connected with us through our internet radio station, WKAPfaith.com. And be mindful of this. If you know someone that is dealing with food insecurities, we have a public charity, New Life Food Source Pantry, which we provide food for those who are dealing with food insecurities. And if you know someone who is in need of food, have them contact us on the T-Mobile call or text line at 267-992-1424. We will give them instructions on how they can receive food from our food source pantry, New Life Food Source Pantry. So one of our listeners and viewers sent in a communication saying, your friends have been discussing open relationships, and that appears to be the new norm in a relationship. Okay, so first of all, that's not normal. How can that be the new norm just because society says it's okay? Relationships are not designed to be open. They're not designed to include someone else in your relationship. If you're going to go from one person to another person and pass each other around, that's only going to result in confusion. So here's what I'll say to everyone. Let's stop letting society tell us that things that are not normal are normal and that it's okay. Because it's not okay. It causes confusion.